Alrighty. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Tree Scout members call. I'm Scotty B, and I'm here with a group of amazing people. And today our guest speaker is Molly Ostrander, and she is the GI detective. She is a registered dietitian and a gut health specialist, and she will be sharing her wisdom and challenges that she's overcome personally. So, Molly, thank you for being here, and you can just go ahead and take it away.
Wonderful. I am have a little slideshow, if that's all right. Um, so thank you so much for that awesome intro. I am here to talk to you today about nutrition for a healthier gut. And I consider myself somebody who understands quite a bit about that because I've had Crohn's disease since I was very young. And so through the years, I've been through different iterations of medical and nutrition and pharmaceutical. And I really find that a combination of all of these things is what has gotten me to where I am today. But what made the biggest difference once everything else was under control was the nutrition. And so, what I would like to do is take that experience and pour it into you today. So, stop me anytime, throw questions in the chat. I am a registered dietitian. I'm also a integrative and functional nutrition certified practitioner. So, what is gut health? When we look at what that actually means, I think it's a buzzword, but it doesn't necessarily have a clear connotation. And it's a conversation between all systems in our body. So, we're looking at food, we're looking at our microbiome, which is the bacteria in our intestines. We're looking at our lifestyle, like movement and sunshine, right? And how much we spend with a community and how we live our lives from day to day, in terms of stress and in terms of screen time and all of those things. And so when we bring all of that together, we find that the body can achieve a balance. And that's really the functional definition of gut health in a nutshell. It matters because when your gut is in balance, when you have a solid, like a strong, rich, diverse microbiome and barrier integrity or strength between your intestinal cells, then you have better overall health. You have a better mood because your gut and your brain are very tightly connected. You are better able to absorb energy and to absorb nutrients for better energy. And also, it's related to blood sugar. And when we have a stable blood sugar, we also have better energy. Your immune health is better because 60 to 80% of our overall body's immune system is in our gut, and your risk of chronic disease is much lower. So, basics of digestion, really quick. I promise we're not in school here. When you chew your food, that's the most that it gets broken up. And the saliva has an enzyme in it called amylase, and that amylase breaks things down. But the mechanical act of chewing is the biggest thing here when we're thinking about digestion. Then we go down to the stomach, where there are some enzymes in the stomach, and there's hydrochloric acid. Hydrochloric acid is involved, for example, in B12 absorption. It actually breaks off the B12 from the food. You can't do that any other way. So, one reason that people may find that they have a deficiency of B12 could be because they have a low stomach acid. And there are ways to correct that using nutrients and using supplements. And then also kind of rebalancing everything else tends to bring up our natural level of stomach acid over time. But HDL, very important also in iron digestion. Then we've got our liver, which is our natural detoxifier. We don't need a detox powder because we have our liver. Hopefully, we all have some amount of functioning liver. This liver also creates bile. It recycles cholesterol around your body to make hormones and cells, stores energy, metabolism, nutrients, and it helps with immunity. The gallbladder, so you can see the gallbladder right here. Not everyone has their gallbladder, but it's like a highway for the digestion. It stores and concentrates that bile and shoots it into the small intestine when we are eating food. So if you don't have a gallbladder, that's okay. It just has to take more of a back road. That bile has to take more of a back road to the intestine than the highway. Also helps to absorb fat soluble vitamins. Small intestine is where we digest and absorb our nutrients, and the colon is where we reabsorb any water and electrolytes that are left. We create biotin and vitamin K in our colon, and of course, its major function would be for waste. So, what is a gut healthy diet? The future goal that we would want to work toward, remembering that I can sit here and tell you what the perfect thing to do is, but if you have issues with digestion, then you're not going to be able to eat a ton of fiber right away. And you need to massage those types of fiber, the cooking, sorry, the way that you cook it or the type, right? So, like if it's a bell pepper, is it better if it's cooked? Is it better if it's raw for you? Is it better to avoid the pepper but eat the zucchini? That kind of thing is very personal. Doesn't mean you can't achieve this with digestive distress, but it does make it a little more challenging. And not everyone has the same diet. So, all of these things are very individualized. So when you see something on social media that's like, oh, eat this for gut health, yes, absolutely. More than likely, there's some truth to what they're saying as long as they know what they're talking about. But it doesn't mean that you can eat all of that. So just keep that in mind. Fiber is number one. Fiber feeds our good gut bacteria. Every color of the rainbow has a different nutrient and it has a different phytochemical in it. So, antioxidants that reduce that inflammation, good gut bacteria, all of those things are involved in fiber. Healthy fat is another one that helps with the strength of your intestinal cells. It helps with your regular cells, your skin, and healthy fats like omega-3s, olives, avocados, fish, shrimp, that sort of thing, reduce inflammation as well and are very beneficial to your brain and your mood. Probiotics are foods that contain living probiotic bacteria. Sometimes we also call those functional foods, and I'll talk about that later. Protein, of course, whatever kind of big push with protein with these new dietary guidelines yesterday, but any way that we can obtain protein, whether it be plant-based protein or animal-based protein, we are really going to be doing ourselves a favor. And protein is also really good for wound healing. So if you think about like if you had an ulcer, a protein would help to heal that. Like with inflammatory bowel disease, I've had, different strictures and lesions and things like that. And the protein is very soothing and beneficial for that. The more cooking you do, the better you're going to feel. And that'll be a theme throughout. And this won't be too long, I swear. So when we think about how this pertains to the Tree Scouts, we're looking at really that self-preservation and resilience, like Scott was talking about earlier. Fermented foods are something that you can easily do at home by literally sprinkling some salt on a cucumber and letting it sit out for an hour and a half. Then we've already got a little lightly fermented cucumber. You can go one step further with cold or hot pickling. You can use pickling by canning. You can make all kinds of brines and all kinds of different things that are fermented that have probiotic bacteria, like half sour pickles, for example, are a fermented food that can basically a natural probiotic. Sauerkraut, kimchi, miso, all of these things. Seasonal eating is huge. So I think that we're all in agreement here in this particular forum that when you eat foods that are in season, you're naturally supporting diversity in your body because you're only like right now here in South Carolina, we would only be eating the foods that are in season. So it's a lot of citrus and it's a lot of winter squash and leafy greens. And obviously, biologically, these foods have evolved to be in season during these darker, colder times, or were stored traditionally, like if there is a lot of snow on the ground or whatever during these darker, colder times to be used to nourish what we need in the darker months. So the vitamins and minerals that we're getting from these seasonal vegetables are optimized for our condition right now in this stage of darkness and this stage of winter. But also, we're getting the local dirt, and local food means local dirt. And that's really good for your gut microbiome because you're building that richness and you're really connecting with the earth in a different way. So even though if we go to the farmer's market or grow our own food, we're rinsing the dirt off, certainly you're still getting the microbes that are in your neighborhood, and that's going to be a lot more beneficial and nourishing to your body than something that we got from Peru that was picked 2 weeks ago, for example. I know it's not always possible, but just thinking about that, especially in the summer, like as we go through those seasons in the summer, it happens so quickly here in South Carolina, but we can see the change of each thing. And it's interesting how the foods with more and more water are more popular and more readily available in the later, hotter months of summer. If you think about that, it's a natural way to protect your body. Using herbs and spices and tea as digestive aids, chewing fennel seeds, drinking peppermint tea, any kind of spices and herbs that you can grow, you can use those all year round. You can grow them all year round inside, and all kinds of spices are very, very good to reduce inflammation. Peppermint and fennel and ginger, especially. I don't know if we can grow ginger here. I think we can, though. Yeah. All good for relaxing your intestines, opening them up, allowing gas to pass through, and allowing for less bloating. Now, any questions so far? I'm sorry, I can't see the chat with the way this is sharing.
Uh, no,
Okay.
we don't have any questions. This is awesome so far, though. Good job.
Okay, great. Oh, thanks. Perfect. Now I can see this. With the traditional food prep methods, I'm talking about if you're sensitive to something like beans, then we would use dried beans. We would soak them and we would change that water every 8 hours or so because any of those non-nutritive compounds like lectins that you may have heard of, that or like the extra thick cellulose that's in the shell, we break that down by rinsing, by soaking, and then we change out the water to further like pull it out of the bean, which makes for a much more easily digestible bean. And then you change the water again when you cook them. Those are a great way to add plant-based protein to your diet. And beans are also incredible for your blood sugar and your overall health. Animal foods and gut health, especially collagen rich proteins, bone broth, that sort of thing, is going to be really healing to your gut lining, which does help with your immune system because our intestinal cells are tight together like this. But when we undergo age or exogenous toxins, toxins from the outside, toxins from the environment or food or whatever, we get the flu, we get the stomach bug. We're on a lot of antibiotics. Things slowly kind of pull apart and we leach through nutrients out of our body, out of our intestinal wall, which can then cause more inflammation. So just thinking about that. And if you are sensitive to foods, eating a very small amount, like a microdose, like a tablespoon per day, and slowly building up those enzymes that your body naturally creates to digest them is really helpful for that sort of thing. Knowing when to supplement, I always go to food first before supplements, but sometimes we do need a supplement, like in the case of anemia. Detoxification. And I'll provide these slides to you guys so you can have them later. But essentially, we just want to reduce little things where we can. Like if there's a frozen steam and bag vegetable, we can pour that into a glass bowl and microwave it or heat it in a pan instead of microwaving the plastic. Looking at how our liver does the detoxification for us, and we help it by sweating and staying hydrated and having regular bowel movements and crying as well, interestingly enough. Mold is another issue. We can always talk about that some other day. Common gut disruptors are going to be like ibuprofen and like tons of antibiotics, or there are some other medications that can bother the gut. I'm not saying stop taking medications. I'm saying just work with someone or understand that your medications may be affecting you and how can we support your body when this is required. An overly restrictive diet. So if everything has to be perfect, if you don't have enough diversity, that's going to bother you. Of course, stress, screen time, trauma, environmental stuff like mold, or, if you are microwaving plastic, which is, I think this is supposed to be hot takeout, but I thought of it like hot plastic. And meal timing and patterns, making sure that, we're not skipping lunch or that we're not having huge gaps between meals and then causing us to eat really quickly, swallow a lot of air, get really bloated and uncomfortable. Those are like the biggest ones. Habits are important. So these are a couple of habits that you could look into to support your brain and your circadian rhythm and your mood, which then in turn supports your gut. There's a loop that happens where our brain and our gut talk to each other. What I mean by overly restrictive diet. So, what I mean would be if you were concerned, like let's say you're gluten free, dairy free, and you don't eat any legumes, like you're doing Whole 30, something like that for an extended period of time, no sugar, and you're trying to be as clean as possible, you end up, especially without beans and without certain foods, a low FODMAP is another example. So it removes the fermentable carbohydrates that cause bloating or diarrhea sometimes, but it also removes gluten, dairy, sugar alcohols, and any kind of like more than half of all the fruits and vegetables. And you're not giving your body that diversity. And the less variety you eat, the less rich and diverse your microbiome is, and the less amount of foods that you can tolerate when you do bring them back. So if you think about it, if you're too depleted and then you try to eat some beans or you try to eat some broccoli or something, you won't be able to because your body will say, "Oh, what's this?" And it'll kind of puff out your stomach, and you have to learn again how to eat those things. And cruciferous vegetables are extremely helpful in detoxifying hormones and making sure that we are properly cycling through estrogen and testosterone and progesterone and androgens of any kind. And when we look at and they also help our liver do its thing. So if we limit and limit and limit, and another way that the overly restrictive diet is a problem is it can often get us to a point where we're not socializing in a way that's relaxing and fun. We're socializing with a lot of stress or a lot of fear. And community and socialization, as you're building here, is one of the ways that we live longer and one of the ways that we reduce the stress in our nervous system. So when there's too much built up around the meal and around being perfect or around sticking to your diet, then we end up losing a lot of the benefits of community because we are so concerned with the particular items. Does that make sense? Let me know if you need more clarification on that.
Yeah, actually
Prac
that makes a lot of sense. And while you're and thank you too. I
yeah,
really didn't think about the missing out on some of the things, even like gluten and dairy.
yeah.
Uh, but one thing I've thought about in the past a lot is if you're a vegan, and I've read that there were key nutrients in meat that are good for your body, for your brain, that
hmm
you won't get if you're not eating meat. Do you know anything about that?
Sure. The vegan diet is low. So B12 is only found in animal protein. And iron is found in plants, but it's difficult to absorb from plants. So you really have to eat a lot of it. You have to make sure you're pairing it with vitamin C. And generally, since you're already taking a B12 supplement, because you need B12 to survive. You need it, you'll have neuropathy, all your hair will fall out. There are a lot of consequences to having very low B12 over time. And dementia is another like long-term consequence of having really low B12. So keeping in mind that you do have to be a little more open to supplementation if you're a vegan, but there are certainly ways to get those nutrients from food. So minerals like zinc and calcium can be a little tricky, certainly as well, in addition to iron. And then a lot of with vegans, you want to be intentional. So making sure that when you do eat, you're making it count and you're thinking about the composition of the meal and having some fat with that meal and having some kind of protein with every meal because it is, naturally lower in protein. But things like lentils are high in iron and calcium and protein. And when we look at other plant-based proteins like tofu or other things like that, then you can definitely have a balanced diet. But you do want to look at, sometimes people will track for 2 or 3 days in an app like Chronometer, and that will show them how many nutrients they're actually getting. And then you can work on, okay, well, how can I boost, more calcium or whatever it is? Shiitake mushrooms do have B12, but in such low amounts, Virginia, that the concern is absorption. And then also, because shiitake mushrooms also have vitamin D, but it's so difficult to get the level to move unless you're eating just such a significant amount or even like powdering it and using it like in large amounts of the powder as kind of like a supplement form, like a natural supplement. And I would say if you want to try using food as before you use supplements, you certainly can, but I would really encourage you to get levels checked commonly at the doctor because if what you're doing doesn't end up working, we want to get ahead of that. And I want you to honor, whatever eating pattern that you have without the detriment of your own health because there is room to have a healthy diet as a vegan, but it does take more intention and more focus and monitoring just to make sure that everything is okay. All right. Um, so if you're feeling bloated, you can try any of these things. And we've been looking at this one for a while, so I'm sure you've seen it, but definitely more cooked, less raw, not swallowing all that air like we talked about, chewing fennel seeds, doing twists with yoga, maybe walking after meals to regulate blood pressure and help for that food to move, and chewing your food. Again, like I said at the beginning. I have some information here on building a gut healthy pantry that you can look at later. And then calming inflammation, we're looking at those omega-3 fatty acids, so avocados, nuts, pumpkin seeds, olive oil, olives, flax seeds, chia seeds, and of course, oh, hemp hearts are a great one. And then, of course, seafood, and egg yolks as well. Eating the rainbow, like I mentioned, those functional foods, like I mentioned, and then identifying your triggers. So, if a food bothers you, again, maybe tracking for a few days to see if something bothers you, and then coming back to it to make sure, like in a month or 3 months, that you don't have to avoid it forever, because that's how those really restrictive diets get built. People come to me and it's like, 1 month they start avoiding broccoli and then they start avoiding dairy and then they're like, well, I'm not going to eat any corn and then they're like, I'm not going to eat any soy. And by the time they arrive, and it's perfectly fine to have a gluten-free or a dairy-free or both diet. But when we start eliminating every big food group, that it's just impossible to navigate on your own. And we really want to make sure that if you're avoiding something, it's for a very good reason. So if you want to contact me, I'm happy to meet with anyone here live for 30 minutes complimentary. And you can just shoot me an email, hello@nutritionforpeople.com, and we can go over whatever your biggest concern is. And you can follow me on all social media at Women's Gut Health.
Beautiful, beautiful, Molly. That was an amazing presentation, and man, you answered so many questions that I've had for like decades.
Oh, wow. Well, that was easy.
There was yeah, I had some key questions, but I wouldn't have. So it sounds like you pretty much eat just about everything, anything. Is that accurate?
I really appreciate the hearts and the applause. And yeah, I mean, I would consider myself definitely in moderation, someone who likes to enjoy a lot of things. I used to be a chef. My husband was a chef. We met at work. So we really like going out to eat. We like trying different things and we like the variety of all different foods. And like I know that if I eat too much sugar or eat too much dairy, then I'm not going to feel well. So I'm not going to do that. I don't really like over time, once you realize what makes you feel bad and how bad it makes you feel, then you don't naturally want it as much. And so, I have noticed my own patterns over years of doing this work and then also advising other people and learning from them what they tell me too. But I do think that there's something to be said for being open and traveling and trying different things and enjoying the community as well. So, yeah, I do eat a lot of things. I wouldn't say I'm overly restrictive. And I think a lot of people in my profession do tend to lean more gluten free. I tend to lean more like process, not as processed. Like if I'm going to eat a snack, it's popcorn that I pop myself. I'm really not huge into like the bagged stuff.
Okay.
Molly, I have a question for you.
Please. Yes.
So, I saw a functional medicine doctor and I got a food allergy test, and I was basically allergic to, or my IG was elevated for everything that I absolutely loved. And this was
Mm-hmm.
like probably back in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
I eat all of those foods now. Blueberries,
Mm-hmm.
bananas, gluten, not in excess, but it was that was like a scary thing to learn that I was allergic to a lot of the things that I loved. So, like, what would you advise people who also experience that discovery of maybe being adverse or allergic or having some sort of reaction to certain foods? Um,
Now, sorry, finish up.
that was it.
Okay. Was it IgE allergy?
I think it was IgG.
Okay. IgG is a sensitivity marker. So IgG, IgA, IgM, those are all food sensitivities. IgE, as an elephant, is the only food allergy. And that's where your throat closes up, you get rashes. Not that you can't get rashes with sensitivities, but an allergy is more of like the life-threatening lip swelling kind of thing. If they did an IgG test and they didn't test any other immune marker, then we've got to think about what IgG does. So it's an immune globulin, and when on its own, it could be elevated if the food works for you or if the food does not work for you. It can also be elevated if those particles of foods, I like to think about it like a corn kernel. Like if you have a little bit of intestinal permeability or leaky gut or separation between those intestinal cells, then that corn leaks out. And way there your body makes a flag and waves and says this is an invader, it's not supposed to be out of the intestines. And so then every time you eat the corn, your body gets more and more annoyed because it thinks it's like the flu virus. So as you do work on healing your gut lining and enriching your gut microbiome and reducing any kind of histamine reaction that is coming about because of that, then you can safely eat those foods again. But I would say food sensitivity tests only in extreme conditions, like if you had debilitating eczema. If it's more GI stuff, there are other things that you want to try first. But that's just how I practice. Everybody's different.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah,
I had a question.
sure.
So I was wondering because you mentioned like in order to get levels tested to just go to the doctor, and the question was how would you know when to supplement? But I think it was just like actually how what is the most common way or to get your levels checked? Would it just be to be going to the doctor and getting them checked so that you know where you stand with everything?
That's a great question. With the levels, the common deficiencies are going to be vitamin D and iron and vitamin B12 as well. So those aren't levels that are normally going to be checked. Yes, they'll check your hemoglobin and hematocrit as part of that panel, but hemoglobin is not the best marker of iron. So asking for a full iron panel, just like, once a year, at your physical, hey, my dietitian told me to get a full iron panel, vitamin B12, vitamin D, and see what they say. And generally, they'll say, oh, insurance won't cover vitamin D. It's going to be $60. But other than that, they tend to do everything else without concern. You could also ask for ferritin, which is your storage of iron. So for women, we want that over 50. Vitamin D, we would like that at 50. And the reference range for vitamin D is 30 to 100. So it's crazy because you'll go in, your vitamin D will be 31. You'll feel like you're dragging a 100-pound weight behind you, and they'll say, oh, it's normal. But in reality, you could benefit from eating like a lot of egg yolks or getting outside in that sun or taking a vitamin D supplement for a short period of time. Because when those levels are low, you are so tired and depleted, and your immune health is not there. So it's important to advocate for those. And sometimes they'll give you a prescription too for, a month or so. But when I say get your levels checked, I mean every year you want to see year over year what the pattern is. Vitamin B12, you want it closer to 1,000. Again, the reference range is like 300 to 1200. But it's more about optimizing. And so when we optimize our nutrients, that's where we really see the benefit. It's not just let me take a multivitamin because Claire Danes takes it or whatever. And that was the worst influencer example.
Also, in addition to that, so I don't know how many times in my life I've ever even gotten um, checked for any levels. Like I
Yeah.
don't know. So there's that. But when the levels are then checked, if things are really out of whack, is it smart to go to like what would be the next step? So if they're out of whack and I might be, wanting to focus on getting them back, would it be smart to come to a gut health person, or a nutritionist, or like who would be the next step to maybe help me get a plan together?
Yeah, I mean, you can contact me and I'm happy to just walk you through and review what they found and create a quick plan. I think that you do maybe want to talk to someone who understands about optimizing the nutrients. They may say, like, take a multivitamin, and a multivitamin certainly could be part of your plan if that's what you wanted. But when we're looking at the overall picture, I think it's important to make sure that everything is in balance and that you are also feeling good. Because if you're not feeling good, but then the picture says something else, then we want to make sure that we dig deeper where we can. Supplements are not regulated by the FDA, so of course, like, there's some risk. And vitamin D especially is fat soluble. So I would not be taking that for long term without getting it checked, like, and especially if you were taking a high dose. But I think that overall, even just touching base with someone for 20 minutes or so and having them say, okay, try this, and then, check back in 6 months, because it takes at least 3 months for things to change, would be a good place to start.
So maybe like check in with you or somebody gut health in general and just have them walk me through my levels and then explain, maybe like just a nutrition plan or something.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be gut health specific. I mean, I'm more than happy to help as a member of this community, but it doesn't have to be gut health specific because nutrient levels are any, dietitian. I mean, I think I would want someone who was more on the integrative side, who was open also to telling you which foods to prioritize,
Yeah.
because, like a hospital dietitian might just say, take a multi.
Yeah.
But thinking about, your specific population and how we in this more natural arena, do
Right.
want to use food wherever possible and also want to feel our best.
Right. Okay. Cool. Thank you so much.
Virginia, I understand what you're saying. And so the interesting thing about B12 is that, so Virginia said it's B12 is, she's been told that 300 is okay and that supplementing over 1000 is not good. So for you, if you have a history of low and you've been supplementing, maybe asking them to run a urinary methylmalonic acid, MMA. So MMA, methylmalonic, malonic, I don't know how to spell it. Methylmalonic acid, MMA, urine. That is the actual measure of how much B12 is in your body. B12 serum in your blood is a measure of how well you methylate or metabolize B12. If it gets stuck in a certain spot in the metabolism cycle and can't actually be used all the way, then it'll be a little lower. But if it's around 900, 1,000, then we know that you're metabolizing it well. Yeah, so that's something that we can talk about offline with histamine. When we look at histamine, you want to be careful with the things that you put in your body because sometimes they can trigger a response. So if somebody's telling you not to take too much B12 because you have high histamine, it's more of like you want to find that sweet spot. And if you find that when you're supplementing and your levels are higher, that you're feeling worse, okay, that's one thing. But if you feel better when your levels are higher, and that's where documentation comes in, just having a little notepad, or a Google Doc, and every time you get your labs done, noting like, okay, it's January 8th. My B12 is 600 and I feel like energy is a 5, histamine symptoms are a 4. And then you look back and say, oh, well, when it was 300, my histamine symptoms were an 8 and my energy was a 2. And you'll see how you start to change. Does that help? I hope so.
Yes,
What other questions? Okay, cool.
absolutely.
What other questions do you have, Virginia? I just want to make sure I answer them all.
Well, I guess so. My doctor is currently recommending me stay on like a 2-week B12 injection schedule.
Mm-hmm. Good.
I supplement with a lot of spinach and like methylfolate or
Mm-hmm.
folate instead of folic acid,
Mm-hmm.
so I can process that B12. But what's happened is certain, like my blood cells are getting larger, and I feel like higher supplementation helps with that. But my doctor's like, no, you don't need that. That's too much B12. And I'm kind of like, I feel like supplementing like twice a week actually like helps me feel better
Mm-hmm.
as far as injections go. So I guess there's this disconnect between like the medical community and the way my symptoms and how I react to certain supplementations affect how I feel.
Yeah. If you're injecting twice a week, that might be too high.
No,
But
I'm
oh,
not injecting twice a week. My
okay.
doctor recommends once every 2 weeks.
Right.
But when I do inject twice a week, this is methylcobalamin, not cyanocobalamin or hydroxycobalamin.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to feel much better. But she's like, "Oh my God, your blood like B12 serum is like over 1,000. That's too high."
Is this a primary care?
It's my internal medicine practitioner.
Okay. So you can explain to them that you feel better at a higher dose. You can pop in. Now, if you're doing the methylcobalamin injection, you could always do like a once weekly liquid hydroxycobalamin, which is my particular favorite form because it's not going to get stuck in that methylfolate trap if you can't methylate it or if you can't push that methyl through. Hydroxycobalamin, adenozylcobalamin, or a combination of the both is like something you could do liquid once a week. Um, and Pure Encapsulations has one that I like. Hydroxycobalamin and adenosine. Um, okay. So that could be your happy medium. Is that you talk to them and tell them that you feel better under a certain circumstance. And what about, maybe you don't even have to necessarily tell them that you could just try the oral supplementation so that it's not too much. Um, but maybe it'll be more beneficial and you'll find a good happy medium.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Man, what kind of opportunities do you have to get on with a doctor, a dietitian,
Dietitian.
dietitian, sorry, and get direct feedback? I actually have my lab results right here, so I'm like, I print them
Okay.
off.
Any vitamin or mineral labs in there?
I have so I got the works from Calhoun Chiropractic. Is actually Ryan Calhoun's one of our chiropractors on the team,
Mm-hmm.
and I went there after his call, and I got the detailed report. I'm looking at a high. Well, there's a couple questions. Let me ask the first one. If someone had a lab results and sent them to you, what would you what would it look like for you to review that and give them feedback and kind of cost wise and time wise? Anyone could do that from anywhere in the world, essentially, right?
Correct. And so 1 hour is $350. If you mention that you're in this presentation or saw it, then I'll give you $100 off. And again, if you're here live, then I'll meet with you for 30 minutes, no charge.
Cool.
The additional thing I think to think about is that if you just want someone to review your labs and talk to you, and create a plan for you, fine, that's great. If you want someone to work with you for a little longer, then I have a couple options. We can do multiple sessions that the price goes down, obviously in package form. So a couple more sessions, and then we are communicating text, email, that sort of thing between sessions. And the other thing is that I do groups. So the groups are women only. And in those groups, we meet at 7 p.m. on Wednesday nights. The next one starts January 21st. And that is $997. And I have payment plans that start at $150 so a month. So thinking about, not for you, Scotty, sorry, but thinking about how if that's something that you're interested in, like a safe space, a community for women, that's another option that I have. But yeah, I'm happy to, if you want to send those over, I can look at them and then we can meet and kind of figure out a plan if you're interested.
Cool. Yeah, I only have a couple things, and I have no idea what it is, but it looked like I have a low insulin, and then there's EOS Absolute. Do you know what that is?
Yeah, eosinophils.
Okay, that is a little high. And what was it? One other thing on here. Hopefully, I'm not giving away too much private information, but I don't really care. LDL, um, LDL, and the lipid panel is
What
high.
is it? What is it though?
115.
Eh. Functionally under 120 for LDL is fine. Plus, I don't know if they did an LPA, but that's the size of the LDL, and that's more important than the level of the LDL.
Okay.
Eosinophils are white blood cells, and when they're high, really high, not slightly high, then it could be that there is maybe an allergy or something is kind of like a lingering infection or something's kind of bothering you. But a white blood cell is usually a response to an environmental trigger. Like when we get sick, it can be high or low, total white blood cells, but eosinophils, neutrophils, those are all immune white blood cells. Insulin is the key that unlocks your cell and lets sugar into the cell. And when it's low, it means that your body isn't producing quite enough. I don't know how low it was. We can certainly talk about that offline. But, just thinking about different things that it could be like maybe that day, where you were, or overactivity, underactivity. As you get older, we tend to produce less insulin. It's just one of the many fun parts. But if it becomes an issue, like I would bring those doctors at your next physical, if you get regular physicals, and just I would bring those labs to them and just have them take a look and so that they understand that your insulin was low. And maybe did they do an A1C?
Uh,
I'm
and
sure
they
they
want,
did.
yeah,
HGB,
yeah,
A1C.
yeah, hemoglobin.
So you can always tell me that offline if you want.
I don't care. It's 5.6.
Okay. So that is a little bit like your body is producing a little less insulin. So if you are one of those people that skips meals, but maybe eats one and then skips a bunch and then eats another one of the easiest way to fix that, because you're obviously, in good shape and physically active, is to make sure that you have a balanced snack every 4 hours once you start eating. So you can fast as long as you want, but once you start eating, you want to have that regular, predictable intake of some kind of balanced carbohydrate and fat, or carbohydrate and protein.
Okay.
And
That was
that'll
actually
knock that A1C right back down.
okay. That was my next question is about fasting, especially long, like a 72-hour fast. I just did one. I just did an 80-hour fast a couple of days ago, and I felt after I started eating again, I felt amazing. And
Hmm.
I was wondering about fasting, doing the the 72-hour fast for women and if that's safe. I've heard some folks say it wasn't safe for ladies like it is for men. So do you have any input on that?
Yeah, great question. Okay. Looks like someone else is also excited about this topic. So when we look at fasting, I think whatever your body can handle, especially in your 30s, 40s, early 50s, no problem. For women, if you have autoimmune disease, never fast. For women, if you're over 45, I personally would not fast for longer than 14 hours. I think it creates a much more stressful environment that can eventually lead to more insulin resistance and more fat around our middle, which we have enough of when as we get older, whether we like it or not. So, it just like comes out of nowhere. And so I don't want to do anything that's going to exacerbate that or overly tax or stress my body. So for women, fasting, like cold exposure, is very individual. Some women feel great. And if they feel great, then they should do it. But for the general population, it tends to be too hard on us. So when we're looking at fasting or cold exposure, those are two things that can really spike that stress response and make you feel more crappy. Now, for men, you have a different build. So, for men, generally, fasting is fine as long as you're hydrating. I do not recommend a dry fast. I think that that's a horrible idea, and I don't know why anybody would do it. But that's, maybe I'm not extreme enough. However, using water with electrolytes and making sure that you're not like so physically active during the time of the fast, like you really using it as a time to go within and be peaceful and kind of gather yourself and pause and give your bowels a rest is totally fine. I don't think I would go over 72, but a lot of people do. And I think it's very individual. The benefits of fasting are that it can help with your blood sugar. It certainly can help with digestion. But for, again, if you can't fast for very long, even that 12-hour, like say 8 to 8 or 7 to 7, is enough bowel rest for your body to fully be able to clear things out in the majority of people, unless you have like severe IBS-C. But for you guys, if you're interested in those longer term fasts, absolutely just make sure you're hydrating with electrolytes, and they can be unflavored electrolytes, and not so strenuous that you pass out, that you're having a chance to pass out somewhere. Does that answer your question? You have more questions?
That was beautiful. You are on fire. Where's my, hold on a second. Wait. There it is. It's-
Well, I'm excited to be here. Oh, salt and lemon. I mean, it depends on what's going on. So, is salt and lemon better for electrolytes on the kidneys? Salt and lemon are great forms of electrolytes, and lemon has a little bit of antioxidant in there, so we love that. But it if you have kidney problems or if your kidneys are sensitive, like some of these electrolyte packets have like 1,000 milligrams of sodium in them. That's that's a waste of sodium, in my opinion. Now, in the functional community, we see people go as high as 6,000 milligrams of sodium per day in healthy individuals, and as high as, 3,000-ish for light kidney problems. But that doesn't mean that that's necessarily best for you. It really depends on your personal body. But even if I was eating 6,000 milligrams of sodium per day, I still would not do 1,000 milligram packet. I like trace minerals, 40,000 volts. Let me put that in here. That's the only electrolyte I use, and it's unflavored, and I put it in every single one of my waters. And it only has 250 milligrams of sodium. So if you have kidney problems, I would recommend the lower ones. Noon is another one that's low in sodium, and that has a little flavor for you if you prefer that.
Oh, yeah, I just had that the other day, for the first time. Where do you get that?
Noon you can get at like Whole Foods, Sprouts, like at the checkout usually.
Oh,
Um, Trace Minerals, Amazon or traceminerals.com.
cool.
Oh, Harris Teeter. Yes, I love Harris Teeter. We don't have one over here. I'm like closer to Spartanburg. I have to go all the way into town.
Looks like you can get Noon on Amazon too.
Oh yeah, you can get anything on Amazon.
Yeah.
I wouldn't buy probiotics on Amazon. I'd probably buy them at Sprouts or Whole Foods or Harris Teeter.
Beautiful. All right. Well, thank you so much. Does anybody else have any questions? It's 8:05.
Thank
Uh,
you.
we're up on the hour.
Cool. Yeah, contact me. Happy to chat with anybody, really. And it's been an honor. Thanks for inviting me to the community. I look forward to continuing on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch on some more classes and things. And thank you
Thank you.
all, the rest of you, for being here. So if anyone's here and does not have a Tree Scout membership, feel free to go to treehousetradeschool.com, or if you're watching this online and you're interested in becoming a Tree Scout, this is just one of the perks of becoming a Tree Scout. Along with all access to all of our online training, we have monthly events and discounts on in-person events and workshops as well. So this coming weekend is the New Year's resolution retreat. And it's the second time we're doing this and the last time we're doing the retreat this year. So if you're watching this before January 9th, come join us for an amazing event that will leave you empowered and excited for the year to come. Thank y'all. God bless.